What an amazing song. Thank goodness for poetry and music so we can get to our yes. As I said before, most of us who have been here know, all of us who've been here know Kevin from being our moderator, getting us through the annual meeting, jig time. Many also know that Kevin works with the Two Rivers Ottaquiche Regional Board, and he's a senior planner there. This is what they say about Kevin on their website at Two Rivers. Kevin works across our brown fields, water quality, climate change, and housing policy areas. His strengths lie in being the senior staff person on land use regulations, including floodplain development and emergency management. When I asked Kevin for his bio so that I could introduce him this morning, he sent me a cheekier version than the one on Two Rivers' website. He said, professionally, Kevin works in the abstruse art of community and regional planning, which is essentially trying to get people to jointly, with civility, decide on what they want their towns to be. Outside of work, Kevin is a good cook, a new soccer referee, a slow apple tree pruner, the moderator for Pomfret's town meeting, as well as for this church, and in general, a work in progress as a human. His family started coming to the North Chapel almost 2 decades ago because the Sunday when his wife Corey and their kids visited, they were given rubber snakes. Kevin, I know that you're often on the front lines of very big emergencies, and we all are anxious to hear what you will have to say about our little emergencies.
So I'm going to adjust this a little bit there. Thank you, Ann. Yeah, it was the rubber snakes that did it for me. We were trying out various churches in town, and I was home. I was doing something. And Corey came home and said, they gave the kids rubber snakes. And I'm like, that's the one. So that was it. That's the beginning and ending of my theological training. Good morning. Glad to see you all. If I, for some reason, can't be heard in the back, just let me know and I'll try to speak louder. But I think this will do it. I think a lot about emergencies, and so when I was asked to give the talk today, I'd already been thinking about this subject for a little while and kind of rolled a few things together. This is not a news story. Are all people our brothers and sisters? Are we our brothers and sisters' keeper in word and deed? Do we really do unto others as we would have them do unto us? Or is that just a thing that we tell our children out in the living room, and then we're back in the kitchen with wine, we say, nah, we chuckle at the naivety and admit that was a nice thought, but not that realistic. In short, do we practice our spirituality, but not use it in the game? I'd like to reflect on our living up to our aspirations during emergencies in particular, and part of that is how we define emergencies. The pandemic is clearly an emergency. It led to a lot of public spouting that we are all in this together. A common refrain in emergencies, and a very spiritual thing to say. But what did people mean by we, and are, and all, and in this, and together? Were those joyous words of communion, or begrudging words of necessity? We. Does we mean all Americans, or all people? Does it mean just those of my race, or party, or state? I think folks meant it to mean what I call the big we, everyone. But then a whole lot of people did not behave like that. Are. We are. Are implies presently. It is not conditional or vague. It is not about to be or were. It can also be transitory, as in, we are all watching this service, or more permanent, we are all human. For some, I think it was a reaffirmation that we are always in this together, whereas for others, it was meant to signify a temporary truce, so that we could be in it together right now, but after the emergency, that wouldn't stick. In this, we are all in this. Was this the pandemic? This obviously didn't mean the same financial or health risks, since some of us had insurance and wealth and a hospital stay would not wreck our lives. Some of us enjoyed our groceries being delivered, and some of us had to do all the delivering. Like R, it is very direct and can be seen as temporary or permanent. I like to think in this, the big this, means, or at least should mean, all of this. Those crows, the leaves, which sometimes seem to fall on cue, I've noticed, the chickadees, the rain, which is not going to happen for a while, this big this. The human condition on this planet. And I think back especially to my son, of how he would look around the room and out the window at the sun or a bird or a leaf, just kind of in awe. And then they look back at you, and they just kind of this, and then they look at you. And you can see in their wonder and eyes the discovery that we are all in this big old goofy world together. Together. We are all in this together. Together could just mean we are living through a pandemic at the same time, but should individually figure out how to do it on our own. But that would be a miserly statement. Maybe it was supposed to imply that I stood with the meat packers on their cramped line, and you stood with the nurses who were told to wear handkerchiefs, and he wore a mask because his father had cancer, and she didn't worry about staying home from work and losing her job, and they didn't care about your political party, because together can be stuck in an elevator, or it can be bound by love. As Ann said, I work in the emergency field at times, and think about what we are all in this together means in that context. I am glad that there are emergency systems in place. If your car crashes or your house catches on fire, trained people you don't know will drive very fast and arrive in very expensive vehicles and help out. As a society, we have decided to pay for this system that we hope to never use. And our responders are in some ways our professional keepers. But then they leave, mainly staying only until danger is past, not until you are whole in body and spirit. The fire department arrives when something is burning, not when you are burnt out. Police show up when the car crashes, not when it won't start. And EMTs will restart your heart, but not mend it. That is not their job. Why not? If not theirs, then whose? Seriously, whose? Before the responders arrive with flashing lights, it is common for a bystander to be the first person rendering aid. Someone will pound on a stranger's door if smoke is coming out of their windows. A few brave souls will even go into that building and rescue a person. But we don't even knock on the door to see how our neighbors are doing on just a regular day, let alone the door of a stranger. People are generally very altruistic in sudden emergencies, and much less so in the humdrum moments that make up most of our actual lives. We go to church, but we don't live in church. Some of us are occasionally together in certain emergencies for a little bit. Society is the same. We are in agreement that the public should provide aid in larger emergencies, like the pandemic. When Ida swept up the Gulf Coast and then through New York, there was no question whether FEMA would be on its way. When fire burned whole towns out west, government forces tried to beat them back, and when they couldn't, more government forces arrived. We are hugely compassionate at being together in this or that particular disaster right now for a bit, And then we as a state and a society mostly leave you in the ashes. We don't stay in the big this together. We could. Some of that would entail stopping being surprised at emergencies happening that people like me predict and plan for. We will have another Irene. That river will be right here again. A big earthquake will shatter California and Memphis. A heat wave will kill the elderly in Atlanta. But until that moment, we are often lacking in the compassion we need for ourselves. We fail to be in this, and instead are in that, and in that, and that. We are not good with the slow unfolding of smaller crises either. At the person losing their job or their home, at old age and disability, at poverty and shame. Most of us will be there in such times for our close friends, but not for those we don't know. We are mostly apart and only sporadically together. Why? I think it is fear. If I really gave a stranger my coat in the cold, I would run out of coats. Then I would be cold. And I'm afraid that nobody's just going to give me a jacket when I need one. And then we are a little ashamed for feeling this paucity of spirit, because we all know, due to that hazy kindergarten teacher back there in our subconscious, that such behavior is a small failure. But we don't like feeling like that. Instead of realizing that we are forgivable work in progress and trying to do better, we squirm and get out of that situation. We do a quick mental 3-step psychic ejection seat. First, we push the problem into a hole for someone else to solve. Oh, I'm sure somebody else will help them, maybe the Red Cross. Look, I'm running late already. We stop being in this together. Then we cover that hole up with some cement made from indignant bluster that externalizes our failing by making any acknowledgement of it a surprise attack on us. It all becomes you and I and them. And attacks need to be dealt with, so we finish off this process by making the attackers, including that nagging conscience of ours, but preferably some other person or group, the cause of our trouble. We yell, wide-eyed, "The problem isn't the lack of coats, it's all you people making up stories about people with no coats." Such foolishness. This fear, I think, stems from a lack of spirit and faith, and it is understandable, but that does not make it righteous. To really be in this together with you, I'll have to believe that if I give up my last coat, well, I'll find another, or some nice person will give me one. If I pay for your health care or sick days, you'll pay for mine. If either of us fall, the other will carry us. Writ large, such generosity of spirit might look like us treating emergencies, large and small, as the same. And your emergencies as mine. It would also be good practice. A society that gets good at fully dealing with one house fire, not just the fire, but the trauma and the loss and the rebuilding. The shame, or one case of poverty, not just the shame and the hunger and the cold and the privation. Could then do a few at a time, saying with quiet determination each time, we are all in this together. And then we could try dealing it more and more. All of the emergencies, large and small, all of the time, each time saying to ourselves, or to any who ask why, because we're all in this together, until we really mean it. Thank you. And now, we are going to sing the first 3 verses of 128.